The sun was setting over London's busy streets as Karen Williams stared at her phone screen, her perfectly manicured nails tapping nervously against its surface. The numbers on her latest video weren't good, only 50,000 views in 2 days. For someone with 2 million followers, this was embarrassing. She needed something big, something that would make people talk about her again. Karen wasn't always like this. 3 years ago, she was just another university dropout working at a local coffee shop. But then she posted a video of herself pretending to faint in public, and everything changed. The video went viral, getting millions of views overnight. People loved how she made strangers panic and then laughed it off as a joke. From that day on, Karen knew she had found her calling. Now, at 23, she sat in her expensive apartment, paid for by brand deals and sponsored posts. The walls were covered with photos of her pranks, making people think their cars were being stolen, pretending to be a ghost in public bathrooms, and scaring old ladies at the supermarket. Each photo reminded her of a successful video, but lately, things weren't going well. "These numbers are terrible," said Mark, her content manager, as he looked at the latest statistics. He was a short man in his 30s who always wore black t-shirts and carried energy drinks. "People are getting bored of the same old pranks. Everyone's doing them now." Karen ran her fingers through her blonde hair, which she had just gotten highlighted for £500. I know. But what else can we do? I prank people at the airport, in restaurants, even at the London Eye." The room fell silent. 5 people from her team sat around her expensive glass table, all trying to think of the next big thing. Sarah, the youngest team member, was scrolling through her phone when she suddenly looked up. "Hey, have you seen these videos of people trying to make the royal guards laugh or move?" Sarah turned her phone around, showing a TikTok video of tourists making funny faces at a guard who stood perfectly still. Karen's blue eyes lit up. "Those guards, they're like robots. They never react to anything, right?" Mark shook his head. "Lots of people have tried that already. Dancing, singing, making faces, it's been done." But Karen wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was racing with ideas. She opened her laptop and started watching videos of royal guards. Every clip showed the same thing. Guards in their famous red uniforms and tall black hats, standing completely still while people tried to get reactions from them. "But what if," Karen said slowly, a smile spreading across her face, "what if we did something they'd never seen before? Something that would make them have to react?" The team looked at her nervously. They knew that look. It was the same look she had when she decided to release 3 mice in a crowded restaurant, or when she hired an actor to pretend to kidnap her in front of a school. "Karen, we have to be careful," said James, her cameraman. "The royal guards are part of the military. We could get into serious trouble." Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Please, they're just there for show. Besides, it's not like I'm going to hurt anyone. It'll just be a harmless prank to get a reaction." She pulled up a website on her laptop. The page showed different types of novelty items and prank supplies. Her fingers scrolled through the options until she stopped at something that caught her eye. "Look at this," she said, turning the screen around. "They sell fake acid. It's just water with food coloring. Imagine if I pretended to splash acid at a guard's feet. They'd have to move then." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Mark cleared his throat. "Karen, that might be going too far. Maybe we should think of something else." But Karen was already imagining the views, the shares, the comments. She could see the video going viral worldwide. "Girl makes royal guard break character." The headlines would be everywhere. "Trust me," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "This is going to be the biggest video we've ever made. I'll order the stuff tonight, and we'll film it next week. It's perfect." As her team left the apartment that evening, none of them felt good about the plan. But Karen sat on her white leather couch, planning every detail with a bright smile on her face. She had no idea that this decision would change not just her life, but the lives of many others, forever. 3 days before the prank, Karen sat in front of her computer, frustrated. The website she had planned to buy the fake acid from was sold out. She drummed her fingers on her desk, then opened another tab and typed "Buy prank acid online." The search results showed several sketchy-looking websites, but one caught her eye: Ultimate Prank Supplies. The website looked cheap and had no customer reviews, but Karen didn't care. They had what she wanted, and it was cheaper than the other site. The product description read, realistic acid prop, safe for pranks. Without hesitating, she clicked Buy Now and paid extra for fast delivery. The package arrived 2 days later in a plain brown box. Karen opened it excitedly in her kitchen, pulling out a small plastic bottle filled with clear liquid. There was no label, no instructions, and no safety information. James, her cameraman, picked up the bottle and frowned. Karen, something doesn't feel right about this, he said, turning the bottle in his hands. It smells weird. Are you sure it's safe? Karen snatched the bottle back. Don't be such a baby. Look, I'll prove it's harmless. She put a drop on her kitchen counter. The liquid sizzled slightly, leaving a tiny mark on the surface. See? It's just special effects. That's what makes it perfect for the video. James shook his head. I don't know. Maybe we should test it properly first. We don't have time for that, Karen snapped. The video has to go up tomorrow. My followers are getting bored, and I'm losing subscribers every day. That evening, Karen spent hours planning her outfit for the video. She chose a pink designer jacket, white skinny jeans, and expensive sneakers. She wanted to look perfect when the video went viral. In front of her mirror, she practiced what she would say to the guard. Excuse me, sir. She rehearsed, holding an empty water bottle. I heard these uniforms are acid-proof. She giggled at her reflection, imagining millions of views and new followers. The next morning was cold and cloudy. Karen met her team near Buckingham Palace at 9 a.m. She had chosen this time carefully. There would be enough tourists to witness the prank, but not so many that security would stop her immediately. Okay, everyone know the plan? Karen asked, adjusting her perfectly styled hair. James, you film from here. Sarah, you film from across the street to get another angle. Mark, be ready with the car in case security comes. Mark looked nervous. Karen, I've been thinking. This could be illegal. Maybe we should. Oh my God, why is everyone being so dramatic? Karen interrupted. It's just a prank. The guard will jump a little. Everyone will laugh and we'll leave. Trust me, this is going to blow up. She pulled the bottle from her designer handbag and checked her reflection in her phone one last time. A group of tourists walked past, taking photos of the guard. He stood perfectly still, wearing the famous red uniform and tall black hat. Karen waited for the tourists to move away. Starting in 3, 2, 1. James counted down quietly, pointing his camera at her. Karen walked toward the guard, her heart beating fast with excitement. She had done hundreds of pranks before, but this one felt different. This would be her masterpiece, the video that would make her famous worldwide. The guard stood motionless, staring straight ahead. Karen could see his face clearly now. He looked young, maybe in his late 20s. For a split second, she noticed a small wedding ring on his gloved hand, but she pushed away the thought. Hey there, she said loudly, making sure James could hear her clearly. I heard these fancy uniforms are totally acid-proof. Should we test that? The guard didn't move, didn't even blink. Perfect. Karen's hand tightened around the bottle. In her mind, she could already see the headlines. Prankster makes royal guard break character. She imagined the millions of views, the interviews, the fame that would follow. Time seemed to slow down as she raised the bottle. Behind her, she heard James whisper, Karen, wait. But it was too late. Her fingers squeezed the bottle, and the liquid arsed through the air toward the guard. In that split second, as the drops flew toward his face, Karen was still smiling, completely unaware that she was about to destroy not just one life, but many, including her own. The liquid hit guard Robert Thompson's face at 9:17 a.m. For a fraction of a second, everything was silent. Then the world exploded into chaos. The first scream wasn't from the guard. It was from a tourist who saw his skin begin to bubble and burn. Then Robert's training crumbled, and he let out a cry of agony that would haunt Karen's nightmares forever. His white gloves flew to his face as he dropped his rifle, breaking centuries of protocol in seconds. It burns. My eyes. Robert fell to his knees, his tall black hat rolling across the pavement. The red of his uniform was now spotted with dark patches where the acid had splashed. The proud uniform that had been pristine moments ago was now smoking slightly where the liquid had touched it. Karen stood frozen, still holding the bottle. Her smile faded as she watched in horror. This wasn't supposed to happen. The acid was supposed to be fake. was just supposed to make him flinch. "Oh my God," she whispered, her face going pale. "Oh my God, no, no, no." James dropped his camera with a crash and ran forward, but he didn't get far. Two armed police officers stationed nearby were already rushing toward them, their faces hard with anger. Behind them, three more royal guards broke formation and ran to help their fallen comrade. "Stay where you are," one officer shouted, drawing his weapon. "Hands where I can see them." The tourists around them were screaming and backing away. Some had their phones out, recording everything. Karen could see their horrified faces, their fingers pointing at her. A mother grabbed her children and pulled them away, shouting, "Acid, she has acid." The bottle slipped from Karen's fingers and shattered on the ground. The remaining liquid splashed across her expensive sneakers, immediately eating through the white fabric and making her jump back with a yelp. "Get the medics," someone was shouting. "And get some water. We need water now." Robert was still on his knees, his hands pressed against his face. A fellow guard was kneeling beside him, trying to help. "Stay still, Thompson," the guard was saying. "The medics are coming. Think of Emma and the kids. Stay strong." Karen felt rough hands grab her arms as the police officers reached her. They pushed her face first against the palace gates, snapping handcuffs around her wrists. The cold metal bit into her skin, but she barely noticed. She couldn't take her eyes off the scene in front of her. More guards were arriving now, along with palace security. They formed a circle around Robert, trying to shield him from the growing crowd of onlookers. Someone had brought water and was trying to wash his face, but his screams told everyone it wasn't helping much. "I didn't know." Karen cried as the officers began searching her. "It was supposed to be fake. Please, you have to believe me. It was just supposed to be a prank." But nobody was listening to her. Sarah, her team member who had been filming from across the street, was being detained by another officer. Mark had disappeared, probably scared away by the chaos. James was sitting on the ground, his head in his hands, as an officer took his camera and phone. Through the gaps between the guards, Karen could see paramedics arriving. They ran toward Robert with their medical bags, shouting instructions to each other. One of them was calling ahead to the hospital, using words like chemical burns and possible permanent damage. The reality of what she had done was starting to sink in. This wasn't like her other pranks. This wasn't something she could laugh off or apologize for with a funny video. She had just permanently scarred someone, a guard, a father, a husband, all for some views on social media. As the officers led her toward a police car, Karen could hear snippets of conversations from the crowd. "She did it for TikTok. That's the prank girl. What kind of monster? His poor children." The last thing Karen saw before they put her in the police car was Robert being lifted onto a stretcher, his face covered in wet bandages. His wedding ring glinted in the morning sun as his hand hung limply off the side. The same ring she had noticed earlier and ignored. The police car door slammed shut, and Karen burst into tears. Her phone was already buzzing nonstop in the evidence bag. Soon the whole world would know what she had done, and there was no way to edit this video to make it funny. By noon, Karen sat in a small, cold interview room at the police station. Her designer jacket was gone, replaced by a plain gray sweatshirt the police had given her. Her perfectly styled hair was now messy, and her mascara had left black streaks down her face from crying. On the metal table in front of her, a police officer placed a tablet. The screen showed news websites, all with her face on them. The headlines were everywhere. Social media influencer attacks royal guard with acid. TikTok prankster goes too far. Guard seriously injured. Palace attack. Guard fighting for his sight. "Is this you?" the officer asked, pointing to a screenshot from her latest video. Karen nodded slowly, her hands shaking as she wiped her eyes. In another room of the same building, detectives were going through her phone. They found her search history, the website where she bought the acid, and all her messages planning the prank. Her content team had already turned against her, sharing screenshots of conversations where they had warned her to stop. At the hospital, Robert Thompson's wife Emma rushed through the emergency room doors. She was still wearing her nurse's uniform from her own hospital because she hadn't had time to change. Their two children, aged 6 and 4, were with their grandmother, still unaware that their father was hurt. "My husband," Emma said to the receptionist, her voice shaking. Robert Thompson, the guard who was who was attacked. The doctors told Emma the truth. The acid had caused severe burns to Robert's face, neck, and hands. His left eye was badly damaged, and they weren't sure if he would see from it again. The proud uniform he had worn that morning was now evidence in a criminal case. Meanwhile, Karen's world was falling apart through her phone. Her manager called the police station to say he was quitting. All of her sponsorship contracts were cancelled within hours. Her 2 million followers were dropping by the thousands every minute. But worse than the professional damage was what people were saying. Her social media accounts were flooded with angry messages. "You destroyed a family for views. Hope you rot in jail. How do you sleep at night?" Karen's parents learned about what happened from the news. Her father, a high school teacher, had to leave work early when his students started showing him videos of the incident. Her mother collapsed at the supermarket when someone recognized her as the acid attacker's mum. Back at Buckingham Palace, tourists were still taking pictures of the spot where it happened. The ground showed a dark stain where the acid had fallen. Police tape marked the area as a crime scene. Other royal guards continued their duty, but tourists noticed they stood a little further back from the public now. In the police interview room, Karen tried to explain herself. "I didn't know it was real acid," she cried. "The website said it was safe for pranks. I never meant to hurt anyone." The detective showed her another tablet. This time it was a video of the attack, recorded by a tourist. Karen watched herself smiling as she threw the acid. She saw Robert falling to his knees. She heard his screams again. "Do you know what the doctor said?" the detective asked. Karen shook her head, afraid to hear the answer. "Guard Thompson has third-degree chemical burns. He may lose sight in one eye. His face will need multiple surgeries. He has a 6-year-old daughter who's afraid to hug him because of the bandages. All because you wanted more followers." Karen vomited into a trash bin next to the table. That evening, as she sat in a holding cell, Karen could hear police officers watching more videos from her phone. They were looking at all her past pranks now, the ones where she had scared old people, made children cry, and disturbed people just trying to live their lives. "She's been building up to something like this," one officer said to another. "Getting more extreme every time. More dangerous. She just didn't care who she hurt as long as she got her views." Karen pulled the thin blanket around her shoulders and cried again. Her phone was full of numbers. Managers, lawyers, media people. But she hadn't been allowed to call the one number she really needed. Her mum. For the first time in years, Karen didn't care about followers or views. She just wanted her mother to tell her everything would be okay. But everything would not be okay. This wasn't a prank video she could edit or delete. This was real life, and she had just ruined several of them, including her own. 3 weeks after the attack, Karen walked into the courtroom wearing a plain black suit her lawyer had chosen. It was very different from the bright, flashy clothes she used to wear in her videos. Her blonde hair was now its natural brown, and she wore no makeup. The judge had already denied her bail because of the serious nature of the crime. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the public gallery, their pencils ready to write down every word. Karen's parents sat in the back row, looking tired and older than they had just a month ago. Her father had taken leave from his teaching job because students kept making TikToks mocking him about his daughter. Robert Thompson sat on the other side of the courtroom with his wife Emma. His face was still heavily bandaged, and he wore special dark glasses to protect his damaged eyes. The doctors had done 3 surgeries already, but they said he would need at least 4 more. His left eye could only see shadows now. "All rise," the court officer called as the judge entered. Karen's expensive lawyer, paid for by selling her car and designer clothes, stood up to speak. "Your Honor, my client is a young woman who made a terrible mistake. She believed the substance was a harmless prop. She had no intention of causing real harm." But the prosecutor had strong evidence. She showed the court Karen's phone records, her search history for strongest acid pranks, the website warnings she had ignored, and the messages from her team telling her to stop. She played videos of Karen's past pranks, showing how they got more dangerous over time. This was not a mistake, the prosecutor said firmly. This was a pattern of increasingly reckless behavior that finally went too far. Miss Williams cared more about social media fame than the safety of others. Robert Thompson's statement was read to the court because his jaw was still healing. "I was proud to serve as a royal guard," the statement said. "Now my children are afraid to look at me. My 6-year-old daughter asked if I would ever look normal again. I can't answer her. The pain is constant, but the emotional scars hurt more than the physical ones. Emma Thompson spoke next, her voice shaking with anger. Our lives are forever changed. Robert wakes up screaming from nightmares. He can't work. He can't play with our children like he used to, all because someone wanted more followers on social media. When it was Karen's turn to speak, she stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold her written statement. I'm so sorry, she began, then started crying. I never meant. I didn't think. She couldn't continue and sat back down. The judge looked at Karen for a long time before speaking. Miss Williams, you had multiple chances to stop this. Your team warned you. The website had warnings. You ignored them all because you wanted attention on social media. This court needs to send a message that such reckless behavior has serious consequences. The sentence was harsh, 6 years in prison. Karen would also have to pay for all of Robert's medical bills, which were already over £100,000. She was banned from all social media platforms for 10 years after her release. The judge also ordered her to attend counseling to address her attention-seeking behavior. As the guards led Karen away, she looked back at her parents. Her mother was crying. Her father couldn't look at her. Robert and Emma Thompson held hands tightly, but their faces showed no joy in the sentence, only sadness at how many lives had been ruined. That evening, news websites shared Karen's prison photo. It was very different from her old social media profile pictures. Instead of a smiling influencer in designer clothes, it showed a scared young woman in a gray prison uniform, finally understanding the price of fame. In her small prison cell that night, Karen found a letter from her mother. We love you, it said. We'll help you through this. But as Karen lay on her narrow bed, she knew some things couldn't be fixed. Her reputation, Robert's face, his children's trauma, her parents' shame. These were permanent consequences of her actions. The guard outside her cell was watching videos on his phone. Karen could hear the faint sound of her own voice from one of her old prank videos. Even in prison, she couldn't escape what she had done. The likes and followers she had wanted so badly now seemed meaningless compared to the real lives she had destroyed. 6 months after Karen's sentencing, the effects of her actions continued to spread like ripples in a pond. Her story had become a cautionary tale that changed many lives, far beyond just her own and Robert Thompson's. In a small town 3 hours from London, Karen's younger sister Lisa sat in her university counselor's office. I can't take it anymore, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. Every time I log into my online classes, someone posts acid attack memes in the chat. They call me Acid Girl's sister. I haven't been able to focus on my studies for months. The next day, Lisa dropped out of university. She had been studying to become a teacher, like her father, but now that dream seemed impossible. Who would hire a teacher whose sister was infamous for attacking a royal guard? Karen's parents had already moved away from their home of 20 years. The hate mail never stopped coming. People threw acid-filled balloons at their house. Their car was vandalized with the word ACID scratched into the paint. Mr. Williams had to quit his teaching job after students kept making cruel TikToks about him. They now lived in a small flat in Scotland where nobody knew them. At Buckingham Palace, new rules were in place. Tall glass barriers now separated tourists from the guards. Signs everywhere warned about severe penalties for harassing the guards. The proud tradition of tourists taking photos with guards had been forever changed because of one person's quest for social media fame. Robert Thompson was going through his 6th surgery. The doctors were trying to save what little vision remained in his left eye. His wife Emma had to quit her nursing job to care for him full-time. Their savings were running out, even with the compensation ordered by the court. Karen's family had sold everything they could to help pay the medical bills, but it wasn't enough. Their 6-year-old daughter, Jenny, was seeing a child therapist. She had nightmares about people throwing acid at her too. At school, other children asked her questions about her dad's face. Some parents had even stopped letting their kids visit their house, as if trauma was something contagious. The impact reached into the social media world too. Major platforms had started banning prank videos that could be dangerous. Content creators who used to make similar videos suddenly found their channels deleted. Many complained about lost income, but nobody wanted to risk being the next Karen. James, Karen's former cameraman, had become an anti-prank activist. He traveled to schools and universities, showing students how harmless pranks could go horribly wrong. He always started his talks by showing the video he shot that day, the one that still gave him nightmares. "I could have stopped her," he would tell the students. "We all could have, but we were too focused on getting views. Now someone has to live with scars forever, and my friend is in prison." Sarah, the youngest member of Karen's team, had started a support group for content creators addicted to social media fame. "We chased likes and views like drugs," she explained in a documentary. Karen's story showed us how dangerous that addiction can be. The police had shut down the website that sold Karen the acid, but new ones kept popping up, selling dangerous chemicals as prank supplies. Officers now regularly posed as buyers to catch these illegal sellers. In Parliament, politicians were discussing the Social Media Responsibility Act. The new law would make content creators legally responsible for any harm caused by their videos. Some called it Karen's Law. Mark, Karen's former content manager, had written a book about the dangers of social media fame. "We built our careers on making people uncomfortable," he wrote. "We never stopped to think about the real human cost of our content." Even Karen's old followers were affected. Many young influencers deleted their prank videos and apologized to people they had humiliated. Parents started monitoring their children's social media more closely, afraid they might be inspired by similar pranks. One evening, Robert's wife Emma found their daughter Jenny looking at old photos of her dad in his Royal Guard uniform. "Will Daddy ever look like this again?" Jenny asked. Emma couldn't answer. Instead, she held her daughter close, both of them crying for the life they used to have. The ripples kept spreading. Each person touched by the story carried it forward, changing how they lived, worked, and thought about social media fame. Karen's 8 seconds of reckless action had started a chain reaction that would continue long after her prison sentence ended. 3 years after the acid attack, Karen sat in a dimly lit TV studio. She was wearing simple clothes, a gray sweater and black pants. Her once famous blonde hair was now its natural brown color, cut short and plain. She was here to film a documentary called "When Social Media Destroys Lives." Looking back, she said to the interviewer, her voice quiet and different from her old loud, excited tone, "I was addicted to fame. Every video had to be more shocking than the last one. I never thought about the people I hurt. They were just content to me, not real humans." The documentary also interviewed Robert Thompson. His face showed the scars of 8 surgeries. His left eye was slightly clouded, and he could only see shadows with it, but he had survived and even found a new purpose in life. "I can't be a Royal Guard anymore," he said, sitting in his small house with his wife Emma beside him. "But I teach security training now. I tell my students that their job isn't just about standing still and looking tough. It's about protecting people, even from their own stupid decisions." Their daughter Jenny, now 9, had started a children's support group at her school for kids whose parents had been hurt or disabled. "My dad's face is different," she told the camera bravely, "but he's still my hero. He teaches me that being strong means helping others, not hurting them for attention." Karen watched these interviews from her prison's TV room. She was halfway through her 6-year sentence, but the prison guards said she was a model prisoner. She worked in the prison library and helped run a program teaching other inmates about social media addiction. Some days, Karen wrote in her prison journal, "I wish I could go back in time and shake my old self, tell her that no amount of likes or views is worth destroying lives. But I can't change the past. I can only try to prevent others from making the same mistakes." The acid attack had changed British law. The Social Media Responsibility Act, commonly called Karen's Law, had passed. It made content creators legally responsible for any harm caused by their videos. Social media platforms now had strict rules against dangerous pranks. Karen's old content team had all found different paths. James, her former cameraman, had become a successful public speaker, warning students about the dangers of social media fame. Sarah ran a counseling service for influencers struggling with addiction to likes and views. Mark had written a best-selling book about the dark side of social media. Karen's family was slowly healing too. Her parents still lived in Scotland, where they had built a quiet new life. Her sister Lisa had finally returned to university, studying psychology instead of teaching. She wanted to help other families affected by social media addiction. One day, Karen received a letter that changed everything. It was from Robert Thompson. I spent 2 years hating you, he wrote. But hate is like acid, it burns the person holding it. My children taught me that. Jenny asked me why I'm always angry, and I realized I had to let go. I don't forgive you for what you did, but I don't want to carry this anger anymore. I hope you really have changed. When Karen was released from prison at age 29, she didn't try to become famous again. Instead, she moved to a small town in Wales where nobody knew her story. She found a job at a local library and started volunteering at a youth center, teaching kids about the dangers of chasing social media fame. She never made another video. Her old social media accounts remained deleted. Sometimes, young people at the youth center would find her old videos and ask if she was that Karen. She never lied about it. Yes, she would say, that was me. Let me tell you what I learned about what really matters in life. 5 years after the attack, Karen sat alone on a beach in Wales, watching the sunset. Her phone, a simple one that couldn't download social media apps, buzzed with a text from her mother. Proud of who you're becoming. Karen looked at the waves and thought about how different her life was now. No followers, no fame, no viral videos. Just quiet work helping others and trying to make up for the harm she had caused. She had learned the hardest way possible that real life wasn't about getting likes or views. It was about the impact you had on others, and making sure that impact wasn't acid burns on someone's face. That night, somewhere in London, Robert Thompson hugged his children before bed, his scars visible but his smile genuine. In a Scottish town, Karen's parents slept peacefully without fear of hate mail, and in her small Welsh flat, Karen added another day to her journal of quiet redemption, knowing that some stories don't need to be filmed to have meaning.